Guys, I'm so excited for today's episode. Today, we sit down with a good friend of mine. His name is Michael Hartman. I call him Hartman, and Hartman is one of my favorite people on this planet. He has such a heart for people and helping people discover their true story and the plan that God has for their life. And we're going to be talking about that today on the Coffee with Craft podcast. Hartman's going to really talk through this idea of why it's important to plan our life and to have a direction and vision and the way we want our lives to go. So I can't wait for you to hear this episode because I believe it's going to be super impactful for many of you out there. Hey, as always, if you are watching this video on YouTube, hit that like and subscribe button. If you're on Apple, dude, hit us with that rate and hit us with that review. We'd really appreciate that. And if you're on Spotify, follow it. And as always, guys, share this with your friends. We'll keep making podcasts because you keep sharing them and because you keep coming back to the table with us every single week. Other than that, my friends, let's jump into the Coffee with Craft podcast with Michael Hartman.
Welcome to Coffee with Craft.
Well, hey, Michael, thank you so much for joining me today.
Hey, man, it's good to be on the show. And, man, just big fan. And, yeah, thanks for being a good friend over the years, man.
Dude, I love it. Guys, I know our guest today, Michael, super well because we went to college together at the good old Cincinnati Christian University. God rest her soul.
It's going to be one of those stories that we tell our grandkids, be like, gather around, children. Remember that old bank on the hill? That used to be where we went to college. And I slid down that hill, and I've done things. And, yeah, we're going to tell stories about it. It's going to be one of those fun things.
Going to be one of those for sure. Man, and guys, one of my favorite things about Michael is that he is probably one of the most creative people I know. And I have had the pleasure to work alongside that while we were in college at an event called Sneak Day, which is where you took an entire day off class and the school sponsored it. And basically, we just played games like we were children in a schoolyard.
Yeah,
and,
it was.
It was awesome.
Yeah, it was awesome. The best part of the Sneak Day, being a part of it, was not only the fun, but especially the morning, because none of the students knew it except for the people that were in on it, like you and I. And so we would wake everyone up at 7 a.m. To let them know that classes were canceled, and they acted like it was the worst thing in the world. Like, I mean, we had drums, everything. And college kids at 7 a.m. are not the kindest people.
They are not. But, dude, I loved it running through the guy's dorm, banging on every dude's door and screaming Sneak Day at the top of my lungs was always like one of the best things ever.
Yeah, and everyone loved it afterwards. There's still, I was just hanging out with one of our former professors, Rick Cherok, and he still shows one of the videos that we showed, Chainsaw Cherok, to his classes. So good memories for sure.
Yeah, that was crazy. And so Michael and I really kind of like I stole the idea from somebody else, and we just kind of like went with it in our own regard. Michael became Timmy Stallion based off Jimmy Fallon and walked on stage one year with a horse head. And we put like a whole Jimmy Fallon-esque show on for 2 years at CCU during Sneak Day. And by golly, Michael, I would say that those were the best Sneak Days in Sneak Day history.
Those were
I had to say.
Those are some good times. I loved it. We could probably do a whole episode on that.
We probably could. But, Michael, I could sit here and reminisce and talk with you about our life stories, so much so, because we've known each other for the past like 6-7 years now, which is crazy, since 2013, which is just nuts. But we have friends at the table who don't yet know who you are. So, Michael, will you just let us know who you are, what's your story, where you've been, and what you're doing?
Yeah, so my name is Michael Hartman. I currently live in Las Vegas, Nevada, and I've been involved with ministry for 6 years now, since really college or something like that. I don't know the exact number, but I grew up in Indiana. I grew up in the church, loved the church, and just kept falling more and more in love with Jesus through the people that I had in my life. And then I ended up going into college, and that's where I met Eric at Cincinnati Christian University. Had wonderful opportunities to do student ministry there. I really do just love students and families and helping see them thrive. And so after I graduated college, I moved out to Las Vegas and I started doing student ministries. And then I did student ministry at a church for a bit up in the north part of Las Vegas. And then I made the jump to kids ministry. So I've seen both students and kids ministry. And I loved kids ministry at a church in the Southwest side. But recently, which is I'm sure we'll get into here shortly, I've actually kind of transitioned actually out of full-time ministry, and I'm currently working at Chick-fil-A in Henderson, Nevada, and absolutely love it. Love the culture, love everything there, and I'm actually on the side learning to potentially facilitate a process called life planning that has really changed my life and kind of hopefully will help others kind of be at their best, live their fullest lives, and be their healthiest as well. So I'm excited to kind of go through the training for that, and hopefully end up, running retreats for one-on-one, different people one-on-one, and potentially even group retreats, and just really helping people follow Jesus, but also like kind of deepen that relationship and live in what Jesus would say, the John 10:10 way of I have what's that full life look like in Jesus? Because Jesus has come to bring life and life to the fullest. And so that's a little bit about my story. And so, yeah, I'm excited to be on.
Yeah, man, for sure. And I think, man, one thing I love about your story is that it's such a testament that ministry does not end with employment in the local church. Because I think that is such, and this isn't an episode about that, but I think it's a good point that I love about your story is that I think there's this lie that Christians can believe that ministry happens within the confines of a local church with the official employed title of minister or pastor. And what I love is that you're proving how not true that is in your everyday story. And so for me, that's super inspirational. And I love seeing that as you do that, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, one thing I've definitely learned, I think we were talking a little bit about this before I even kind of jumped on this call, on this episode was just that when you are out of the church bubble, you realize you really have to live it out because there's opportunities that are around us every day. And how do I make the most of that opportunity? And even with the life planning, kind of waking up every day with the mindset of I have today, how am I going to make the most of today, and how I'm going to make the most impact on those around me today. And so it's a lot deeper than maybe just the walls of the church. Although, man, I love our local church. Man, I want to see it thrive, and that's kind of a huge
Absolutely.
passion of mine. Of okay, how can I do that? But yeah, when you're outside of necessarily the full time ministry context of a youth minister or senior minister or whatever, you could definitely get to see a different side of life and just even ministry in general of what Jesus has called us to.
Yeah, dude, for sure. So today, Michael, we're talking about this idea of life planning. And I think one thing I want to address ahead of time as we get into this, me and Michael are both in our mid 20s. And so
It's all downhill.
whenever, huh?
It's all downhill from here.
It's all downhill from here.
I'm just
But whenever I've talked to an older person than I about this idea of like a 20-year-old coach or a mid 20-year-old coach, they always cringe and they always have this thing of like they haven't experienced life yet and they haven't gone through these things. And part of that has even like sequenced into my mind of like this idea of like 20-year-olds can't really do that thing. But what I love about Michael is that he's really showing this different perspective of how life planning can help anybody, no matter what stage of life you are in. And then you can help guide people no matter what stage of life you're in. And so, Michael, I just would really love it if you could explain what is life planning and why should everyone be pursuing this?
Yeah, so life planning is just a 2-day process, and sometimes the word life planning can be very deceiving because it's more of life perspective and life roadmap.
Mm.
So the whole story of it, and I'll share kind of how I interacted with it, why it was impactful for me in my life, and where I was at. Is so there was a guy named Tom Patterson, and he was just a genius man. Like, he was just an incredible man. He has the patent for the ATM pin machine. As you go to most banks, like, he's the guy that invented that. And he would never tell you that, but obviously his family, and his legacy today. He passed away last year at the age of 93. But so he invented that, and so he's just this brilliant inventor, smart mind type thing. His daughter died when she was 12 years old, and that sent Tom Patterson into a spiral of alcoholism. And when he was at his rock bottom, he surrendered his life to Jesus. And Tom, as he surrendered his life to Jesus, started reading the Bible, and just his engineering mind started to come across, wow, there's over 1,000 passages in the Bible that talk about God's unique plan for our lives. And if I really believe that God has a unique plan, not, overall, yes, here's what we're called to do, but the expression of what that looks like for each of us individually, of loving God with all our hearts and loving others and making disciples of all nations. What does that look like individually for every single person? He started to kind of try to put together a process of what that would look like. And Tom came across, he did work for the Reagan administration in China. Again, just this is one of those guys that is just one of these, everyone says is just kind of like this humble guy, right? But he's done so many incredible things. So anyways, he was in China, and what he found is, and there's a difference between our Western way of thinking and the Eastern way of thinking. And the Western way of thinking is that we go from point A to point B with as much speed as we can, right? So if you think about it, it is, I want to get from point A to point B as quick as I can. And you think about how that plays out in our lives, you you graduate, you go to college, and you get a job, and it's just very kind of like, A to B to C to D, very quick as you can. You get the promotion, you climb your way up the ladder, or you just solve a problem and you just get there as quick as you can. It's very speed driven, and I'm sure you can think of, times in your life where that's, true of the Western thinking, Eric, as well, but what Tom encountered, along with this, these Bible passages about God's unique purpose for our lives, was that the Eastern way of thinking is more of a spiral, and it's very perspective driven. And you start at point A, but it's in the very middle, and it's a spiral, and it's driven by good questions to get to point B. And so what Tom did is design this 2-day process, and it's really a lot of spiritual direction combined with just that Eastern way of thinking around your life. And so you start and you gain perspective on who you are, how'd you get there, and where are you going, and so out of those 2 days, you really kind of come out of this with this is the core talents of who God has made me to be, and here's my values, here's my mission statement, here's the talents that only God gave me to be. And then out of that, you say, okay, with my story that God has given me, with my talents, with my values, with this perspective that I have in my life that is very Holy Spirit driven, and just trying to gain perspective on who God created me to be, then what am I supposed to do with that to live a full life out of that? And it informs your decisions. It kind of helps give you a guide to, oh, okay, this is what I should be doing with my life, and how I can live a life and a life to the fullest. As I said, kind of that full life that Jesus offers and Jesus kind of provides for us. And when we are living at our best, this is what it looks like, and this is who we are. And so that's the whole process of it. And then I came in contact with this in July, and it kind of changed my life. Because in July, I was doing kids ministry at a church here in Las Vegas, and I knew something was, outwardly everything was fine, right? And it looked successful, but I just felt kind of stuck. And even some of my relationships around me were really strained behind the scenes, and just even everything within me was just kind of like, I don't feel like I'm fully kind of in my spot. And as I went through this process, it became apparent that I wasn't in my right spot, But then too, as I went on this journey later, Tom's theory that is if you spend like 18 months out of your sweet spots, totally, you're kind of running a danger zone. You're going to burn out. You are going to get fired. You're going to do something stupid that's good. You're going to go off the rails. And that's kind of what was happening to me, and not on the off the rails type of thing, but I was burning out and I was depressed and I was bitter and I just didn't know what to do. Everything looked okay on the outside, but everything within me was not filled. And I was just asking so many questions. And out of this life planning process, it gave me tools to say, here's how I'm going to replenish my soul with just me and Jesus. Here's what I should be doing. Why can't I'm not going to be scared to pursue those things within my life now. And it gives me a roadmap to say, oh man, I'm really passionate about this. And as I started pursuing this life planning thing, and now even working at Chick-fil-A and after transitioning out of the full-time ministry per se at a church, it has really given me opportunities to kind of talk about this, spiritually form people, live it out in my own life to be fully healthy. The people around me notice a difference. I'm more passionate as I talk about this process of helping people, and it kind of gives me a roadmap. I broke it all down. Maybe we can talk about it even a little bit later. To kind of just this one page that I pray every day, as I wake up, kind of a life scripture based off my experiences and based off of who I am. That I say, God, I love how you've made me to be. I love that you've made me to be a shepherding developer, a collaborator problem solver, and a simple teacher. That I take things and I apply them to people's lives in a simple way. And God, I know that there might be hard things in my life that come, but I know that your approval drives me and no one else's. And so thank you for calling me your child, and thank you, for adopting me into your kingdom. And it comes from Romans 8. And then I do a value check at the end of the day. I say, if I live these values out every day of hard work, obedience to God, and obedience even in the hard things, humility, that I want to be teachable and I want to be humble and I want those around me to know that I'm approachable, loyalty, that I'm going to walk with people in the hardest things of their life and I'm not going to take the easy way out. All these values. So it's kind of boiled it down to a page that I pray every morning and kind of check every night. So that's a little bit of the journey and that I've been on, and just has helped provide me with greater clarity on who I am, my who God's created me to be, my sweet spots. And so there are people, because Barna research kind of shows that 40%, particularly in the 18 to 25 demographic, which we won't be in soon, by the way, because we're old. But 40% of the 18 to 25 demographic people, they say they're afraid of failure. They have anxiety about the future. And 8 out of 10 of 18 to 25-year-olds say they want to honor God with their gifts, but they are unsure how. And so within that demographic, you alluded to earlier, normally we think of the CEO or the older guy that's in his 50s going to retirement, looking at it and all this type of stuff. But really, as you look at the life planning and understanding, at the core of it is understanding your identity of who God has created you to be. And so if you're desiring perspective or understanding of that, this life plan is to process is really to gain clarity for you, and it's not an X equals Y process. There's not a cookie cutter thing. It's designed really just to here are the tools, and we're going to ask really good questions, and it's going to be so different because it's so unique to you. It's not a cookie cutter. Hey, well, okay, Eric, I tried this to replenish my soul, and God gave me this gift, so why don't you try that? It would be terrible. If you came in through a life planning, they'd be so different than when I would come through a life planning, because we're so wired differently. And God, absolutely, and the uniqueness of what God has given us. And so within that demographic, I'd say the younger that people are, the more that they can understand who God has created them to be, then you won't have to do it when you're 60 years old and, have a life that you just, I just regret this. And now I guess I'm going to correct it in my last, part of my life. Or whatever. So it's really designed to gain clarity and understanding of who God created you to be. That was a long answer.
No, dude. So there's a lot of great, I think, stuff in there. And like you said, it was a long answer, but I took some notes, and I think I want to break down some of the stuff you said, if that's okay. One of the big things that I think you called out, which I think is so true, and I've even seen it in my own life, is that idea that if you're in a spot where you don't belong for around 18 months, you really do start to crack. um, you know, and you really do start to have this either burnout or foundational issues or things that start to happen. And a lot of that, from my perspective, is that the ethos of who you are has been challenged, right? Like an ethos is it's a fancy Greek word simply meaning the character, the belief systems, the values, the essence of who you are really starts to be lost in the midst of not operating in the realm that you were inherently designed to operate in. And so, Michael, man, like the big thing I want to pull out of there, right? Because I know I've struggled with it. You even sure that you struggled with it. I'm sure there's someone at our table right now who is struggling with that concept. Like their whole core of who they are feels wrecked or rough or rigid, uh, because they're not in their sweet spot. So, how can someone start to begin to figure out what is wrong in their life, and how do they maybe start to fix it? Or maybe that's not even the right question, but how do people start to move from the not so sweet spot to the sweet spot?
Yeah, it's a more than a 1 day process that's speed driven. It's going to be
Mm,
that perspective driven. But there's a tool, that I can share kind of with everyone even right now that
absolutely.
starts that perspective driven process. And I can use it. I use it really even weekly, and even more than just even personal life. And so it just requires in my kind of your quiet time, or even just on a Saturday, when you do it or whatever. And I know I've shared this with you. Just kind of getting a piece of note paper, and you're going to label kind of 4 categories, and the categories you're going to label are right, wrong, missing, and confused. And so, what I want you to do is in the right category, in parentheses, you're going to write amplify. In confused, you're going to write in parentheses clarify. In missing, in parentheses, uh, you're going to add. And then in wrong, you're going to, in parentheses, put fix. And so this
Hey,
will, go ahead.
real quick, I want to pause and I want to encourage the listener right now that this tool that Michael is giving you is really really helpful. I've applied it in my own life and I've found benefit from it. And so my encouragement to you right now is to pause this episode, maybe rewind back, and make sure you're writing all these down on a piece of paper so you have them. Because honestly, I promise you guys, this is a really helpful tool. And so, sorry to interrupt you, Michael, but I wanted to really make sure that people heard that. Like, hey, take a second, pause the episode if you have to, and really start to like write this stuff down and start to think about it as you're describing it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, it's so helpful as a beginning point. And so, what I want you to do as you're going through this is in the right category. I want you to list everything that is going really well in your life. And here's what I've learned, that unlived truth, or when you're living in the darkness, that's not going to do any benefit for us. And so it's okay
Mm.
if your life, if you feel like you're not where you're supposed to be, and there's not maybe a lot that you could put in that right category. We just need you to be honest in this exercise right now. So when I want you to think about your life and what's right, I want you to think your physical life, your exercise, your dieting, kind of the basic things in your life. What's going right there? For me, I was running, and it is my routine. I've actually lost 20 pounds since quarantine. And again, that's been in the right category because of the way I prep and all that. And I want you to think emotionally. Emotionally, how do you process emotions? Are you angry? Are you scared? What's going on there? Is anything right going on there? I want to think your relationships with your family, your friends, those types of things, your job. What's right about your job right now? Are you really killing it in a certain area, doing those types of things? Parenting, relationships, all those types of things. Spiritually, then, I want you to think, okay, how is my relationship with God? What are the areas that are right? Maybe it's my quiet time. Maybe it's my prayer life. Maybe it's journaling. What are those areas that are right in my life? And so I want you to take some time and write those down because we're going to start with positives. And then as you took time to do that and pause this episode to do the right and have come back, maybe to this episode or continue to listen to this episode, I want you to maybe go to the wrong. And this is going to be where we're going to be a little bit brave because no one necessarily, this can cause maybe a lot of shame in our lives because these are the things that we don't like about ourselves or like about our lives right now. But Jesus frees us from that condemnation and frees us from that wrong because, again, Jesus wants us to live a life of fullness. And so as we think about what's wrong in our lives, we're going to think physically, what's wrong in our lives, emotionally. Maybe we're not processing emotion. For me, the big thing when I first did this back in July was I do not know how to process my emotions properly. And I'm not talking like just, simple emotions. I'm talking, oh, I wasn't mad at you for that. What I was really feeling was, I was afraid or I was, fearful. Maybe I don't process my emotions. What's wrong spiritually? Do I need an environment to connect with God? And in July, that was one of the things for me. I went out and bought a desk for my room just for that because I realized I needed a spot in my house that was just to connect with God because just reading on the couch for me wasn't working. And so maybe, spiritually, what are the areas that are wrong in your life that you want to fix? And then again, relationally. So as you come back and you kind of pause that episode and you come back now, I want you to think about what's confused in your life. And these are areas that aren't wrong or right. They're just flat out, you don't know and you need more clarity. It could be in a job. Are you in the right role? What's the relationship like with your family, your friends? You're going to think, do you need clarity? Is there a conversation that needs to happen, with someone? That's going to maybe be a hard conversation that you need clarity on. What's going on spiritually? What do you need clarity on there? Do you need to maybe ask a mentor to meet with you to help you go through God's word in a way that you can understand it more? Maybe it's your finances, even as you think about all this. Maybe your savings goal, and how you get to that point. That was one for me, and that I was like, I never sat down. And it's not all about having material things, but it's saying, oh, I've lived my life in a way where I need to have this, have a goal of this, and have a tangible steps to get there. Maybe it's finances, in your life. Maybe it's housing, environment, whatever, is confused within your life. And what's missing in your life, thinking through we call it pies, physical, intellectual, your mind, emotionally, spiritually, financially wise. What are the things that are missing from your life, that you just need to add to your life? Again, for me, one of the big things was environment. So I was missing a real environment office type feel. And so when I created that in my life, I became, I've read so much more, which is replenishing to me. I connect with God better. I get more work done. I mean, it was just the simple fix, Eric, was me going to IKEA and spending about $75, which I was able to, save up for and do, and that was a simple missing, but what's missing within your life, physically, spiritually, emotionally? It could be your time with God. It could be the place you connect with God. It could be friends. There's all sorts of things as you go. I don't want you to get overwhelmed, but I just want you to, again, think physically, intellectually, emotionally. Emotionally has to deal with our relationships with others. And spiritually, how do I deal with God? And I just want you to think about those things and go through those. And that'll kind of begin to form, okay, a little bit of the perspective on, then it becomes, what do I do with this? And that's a whole other conversation that we can have, but you'll start to see, initially, okay, here's what's right. I need to continue to do these things. What's wrong? I need to maybe address these things within my life kind of immediately. And then what's missing, and you can kind of go through each one as you have it on the board, and it'll give you perspective,
Mm.
on what to do. And if you're unsure, kind of on how to address those, again, I would love to talk later, because again, that's the beginning of starting the spiral to clarity um, in your life, in your personal life.
Yeah, man, that is, dude, such good stuff. It's like my fourth time listening to you talk about that exercise, and I love it each time you bring it up because it's literally, dude, it's so good. Um, the thing I want to pause here for our guests at the table today and really say is that I'm thinking there might be two people at the table, two different people. There's somebody who might feel overwhelmed right now, and there's somebody who might think this is a load of crap right now. And the first person I want to talk to is the person that feels overwhelmed. And I want to let you know, hey, if you feel overwhelmed, because like this has been a lot going into this episode and talking through this exercise and things of that nature, I want to encourage you right now, because I think Michael would agree with me that this idea of life planning, this idea of figuring out what is right, wrong, missing, and confused in our lives, it's not meant to be a thing that happens in 40 minutes or an hour. It's meant to take time. It's meant to happen at your own personal pace. It's meant to be a thing that you are intentional about. And so it's okay that you don't have that figured out during this episode. It's okay that you're not even working on it during this episode. It's okay that you feel overwhelmed right now. But don't view this as a thing um, that if like, man, I'm just a mess up and I have to really get this tool to go and stuff like that. Don't view it like that at all. View it as this thing to be like, hey, this is a resource to help make sure that I'm really living out this principle from John 10:10 that says Jesus has come to give me life and life to the fullest. And so let me make sure that spiritually and emotionally and physically and financially and all these other aspects that I'm truly living that out and how I can start pursuing that even deeper. And then there's this other person at the table who maybe thinks that this like life planning thing is just another one of those books that you find in the bookstore on that shelf of walls full of all those other people who are self-help gurus and stuff like that. And I know my thoughts on that, but Michael, I want to know what you would say to that person who might think that this is just another self-help, maybe crap kind of thing.
Yeah, so I would say that again. I think what you said, first of all, let me even backing up to what you said has to tie in, what you just said has to tie into that answer.
Mm.
Because this is not supposed to be some, let's just read a book and then great, we're good. I have it's not X equals Y within your life. But again, it's going to be hard. The analogy I like to use, it's like you're kind of taking a dump truck, or not a dump truck. I don't know. I'm not a construction guy. What, the bulldozer, and you're digging out. Is that the right term? I don't even know. Like,
I think.
yeah, I think so.
Are you trying to like dig stuff out of the
Yeah,
ground? Because if you're digging stuff out of the ground, I think that's an
yeah.
excavator.
Excavator. That's the right word. You're trying to excavate all the.
I had Tonka trunks as a kid.
There's someone listening that's like, oh my gosh, But anyways, so it's like the analogy. It's kind of like you're excavating a lot of the dirt that maybe is untouched. So up at the top, it's going to be really hard, but the deeper, you might get, to the surface level. But a lot of us don't go, deeper. And this life planning is not a self help in the sense that it's like, well, if I do the life plan, then I'm great and I'm good to go. But it's really more what I'd say, it provides time and it provides space for God to do the work and not any of us. We just provide the tools because of that. I do just believe so much the more that I've got into it on that Chinese perspective way of thinking, and it's not like a spiritual, just more perspective driven. It's not like they've cornered the market on it. But it's just more perspective driven, that when we give God our time and our space, I do think that God honors that, and so that it's not a X equals Y type of event, in our lives. It's much more excavating. You're gonna do the hard works. You're gonna pull out these strings. Even for me, a year later, after I've done this, I pulled this out and I've said, oh, I still don't, I'm still finding out things, and it's becoming language within my life between me and God that's giving God the space to do the work, not the tool itself. Does that make sense? It's not the tool isn't. And I know Tom would agree with this, as great a man as he was, but even the Patterson Center today that exists, they would say, and we would say, kind of those that believe in this life plan, it's like we're not like the Patterson process itself is not um, the be all end all, but what it allows is for God to do this, God to give you the space to work because you're doing the work. And it's just all about the process of giving God that time and that space. And as we ask questions together and really seek God together, then you'll find that clarity. It's not an X equals Y type of thing.
Yeah, man, that dude, so good. Everything you just said there, and I wanted us to address those two people in the room because man, I've been both those people, and maybe you've been both those people, where like you hear this really awesome resource and thing, and then you get so overwhelmed by everything, and you're just like, how do I do it all? And then you hear so many resources and so many things, and hear from so many experts that you're just like, oh, what's another one, And so that's why I think it's good to address that because I firmly believe there's somebody listening to this who falls into one of those two categories today. Michael, we've been talking for quite a few minutes here, man. And this has been a very excellent conversation. I've loved so much of it. Kind of like, man, my last question for you as we kind of wrap up this conversation today is what's one thing that you really hope the listener takes away from this?
Yeah, if I would have one thing that I would hope the listener would take away from is, I was about to cheat and be like two things. Um, yeah, so
I'll let you have it if you want. I'll give you
all
two
right,
things.
there
I'll
you
let you
go.
have it.
Yeah, the one thing is we've already said it. I said it multiple times that um, I think a lot of us think that our relationships with God and our journeys with God are a linear upwards to the right potential thing,
Mm,
relationship. And in this life planning process, and in that, what I have learned is that is not the case. But as you give time and energy to God and doing this process to gain perspective and really planning it out, you will see yourself um, closer to God, not in the sense of like, look at these things that I'm doing for God, but I've known His love more because, again, I have the mantra in my life that has pointed me to Scripture and given me a roadmap of who I am, who God uniquely wired me to be. And when I live that out, I find my relationships being so much better, but it's not X equals Y, and so it's worth the journey, it's worth the work, and it's worth the energy, and so but it's not X equals Y. And the other thing that I would say is, if you need help on this, um, I'm definitely available. Even if it's not, I hope that I told Eric this. I'm not some salesman, but I really do desire to see people in their sweet spots and where God can use them. And it's just so awesome when you see someone go from I don't know who God made me to be to I'm in my sweet spot and I'm loving it and I'm serving, and that's what I give my life to. That's what I give my time to. That's what I give my passion to. And so I'm here to help.
yeah, man, absolutely. And so if people want to find you, to reach out and maybe talk with you more, have questions about this stuff, where can they find you?
Yeah, so you can find me right now on Instagram in a real original name, Shot to the Hartman, Hartman. Yeah. Um,
Best name ever.
yeah, Bon Jovi is, the bomb. And so Hartman. And then they can also just email me at michael.j.hartman34 at gmail.com. Or I don't know if this is even allowed on a podcast. I don't know the rules of podcasting, but you can even give me a text at 702-882 2634, and I would love to help you out however I can.
Dang, you just pulled a Bob Goff and gave your phone number out to a bunch of people.
I don't know if I'll get as many messages as Bob Goff. They might just be like, "Oh, okay, great," But yeah, I'm available.
Dude, that's so cool. I love that. I am not as brave as you to be willing to put my phone number out there for everybody to have. But dear Lord, that was awesome. Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
Uh, Michael, I just want to say thank you once again for being on the show today. This has been a fantastic conversation. A lot of really great and rich content and stuff for our lives. I firmly believe has been in this past 40 minutes. So just thank you for being here, man.
yeah, absolutely. I definitely am super thankful for the work that you're doing and the passion that you have for it, man. And just, man, you're a good friend, and you really are. And so you show up, and yeah, man, I don't want to gush on you anymore, but you're a really good dude and good friend.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. And hey, thank you for sitting at the table with us today. Guys, we have these conversations because you sit and engage with us. And so, hey, if you enjoyed this conversation today, let us know. Be sure to reach out. And guys, thank you so much once again. Grabbing a cup of coffee, pulling up a chair, and sitting down and having a conversation on the Coffee with Craft podcast. We'll see you next week.